The graduation address is a special part of this ceremony. It gives us the opportunity to hear from a distinguished member of our alumni community. We're very fortunate today that the address will be delivered by Associate Professor David Wells. Associate Professor David Wells is Senior Forensic Physician at the Victorian Institute of Forensic Medicine and was previously Head of Forensic Medicine at the Institute for 19 years. He is also the coordinator of postgraduate programs at Monash University's Departments of Forensic Medicine, and since 2012 has been a consultant to the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. Previously, he held an advisory role with the World Health Organization. Associate Professor Wells' career has seen him hold appointments in medical, forensical and educational institutions in Australia and the United Kingdom. He is widely published, and his contribution to community and professional organisations over the past 4 decades has been extensive. In 2008, he was invested with the Medal of the Order of Australia for service to forensic medicine and to the development of educational and training programs. I now have much pleasure in inviting Associate Professor David Wells to deliver today's graduation address.
Chancellor, academic colleagues from Monash, graduands, families, support people, thank you. I find this a great honour, and I must admit I'm a little puzzled by it. 41 years ago, I sat where you sat and shared, I suspect, the range of emotions that you are feeling today. But one that came to mind when, like today, an older member of our community got up to give the address. The theme on my mind is, how long is he going to speak for? It had been a long afternoon, and we were very keen to get out to some celebrations. So I'm very sensitive to that, and I will be brief and brisk. But I would like to share some of the reflections that I've had over my career, many of which have arisen because of my own blunders. I do need to stress the importance or the privilege that you have achieved, received today. All of us here acknowledge the challenges that you've overcome to achieve this success. Whatever they may be, academic, as in my case, social, financial, physical, and I suspect a lot of homesickness. We congratulate you on prevailing. Remember that in most cases, these challenges pale when compared with what others of your age are confronting, both in this country and overseas. For them, access to education can only be a distant dream. For many of these people, there is a daily struggle merely to exist. Poverty, disease, famine, abuse, violence. Never forget those less fortunate and your capacity to make a difference for them and for future generations. The words of Winston Churchill, "We make a living by what we get, but we make a life by what we give." Monash University, I didn't know it at the time, but it is an important passport for opportunities and careers. I was working in the United Kingdom. I had just arrived there after a long hiking holiday, and I had no money, but more importantly, no job. I saw a job advertised for a registrar position at a hospital in the north of England. So it was a locum position, and I thought it would be good to get my foot in the door. So I phoned, and I spoke to the receptionist, and I said, "Look, I think I'm your man for this job. You need to be a little bit confident." She said, "Well, that's interesting because the professor and head of the Department of Gynecology is here with me at the moment, and I'll put him on the line." And he said to me, "Where did you graduate from?" And I said, "You've probably never heard of it, but it's in Australia and it's called Monash." And he said, "Can you start on Monday?" I met him at a Christmas party a couple of weeks later and I said, "Why did you give me that job?" He said, "I've heard of Monash. I found that the Australian graduates are excellent and your English was reasonably good." So you now have your stepping stone to the future. Having reached this significant milestone in life's game plan, you will need to accept that there are challenges ahead. Almost inevitably, there will be disappointments. Mine started very early. I had finished my school exams, very keen on continuing my education, but to my horror, I failed to get in to the faculty or my career choice. I had my mind set on doing veterinary science. To my horror, I got an envelope and I was despairing to my parents that, of this disappointment, and they said to me, "So what did you get into?" And I said, "Look, I got into medicine at Monash." And they said, "Well, look, just give it a go for a while." This was followed, after I finished 6 wonderful years of study, I was doing the physician's training program. I had my mind set on something else. My wife of 2 years became ill and she had developed a severe, debilitating, progressive neurological condition, multiple sclerosis. Her neurologist was unable to give us any certainty about the future, and it was clear that this condition might stay quiescent, might progress slowly, or may progress rapidly. So at that time, we made a decision to bow out of my training program and do some travel. This was to the horror of my parents, probably because I was going to be out of the country, and to many friends and colleagues who said, "Look, you're going to lose money, you're going to lose your career, you won't get a job when you get back, there'll be all these new young graduates, you'll be on the shelf." I did return after 2 years. We bought a one-way ticket to South America and hiked that continent for just over a year and then on to the UK. And they were right. I had suffered quite considerably. My colleagues all had large mortgages, lawn mowers, and were very settled in their ways. There is an opportunity, however, to preempt some of these disappointments or challenges, and more importantly, to develop an understanding of them. Be prepared to become older and wiser from those challenges rather than becoming a victim for life. Always let your curiosity underpin your activities. The immortal words of Lewis Carroll in Alice in Wonderland, "Curiouser and curiouser." Always question. Never be scared to ask why. This might be as simple as, why is that practice performed? Or that procedure undertaken? Or that therapy prescribed? Simple challenges not infrequently lead to substantial and beneficial change. I can recall I was doing some work in Southern Africa some years ago, and I was trying to explain to a large group there about the changing gender roles in Australian society, that men had absorbed a number of the activities traditionally allocated to women and vice versa. This was greeted with considerable horror to this group, who were mostly male. And I was interrupted by a gentleman at the back of the audience who stood up and he said, "Doctor, I understand what you're saying, but I'm a Maasai. Nowadays, we don't need so many wives. We have tractors." I felt completely deflated. In your careers, you will be exposed to a range of confronting behaviours: demeaning, disrespectful, racist, and misogynistic. You have a choice. You call them out for what they are, or you can sit on your hands. Similarly, professionally, many of you will come to a fork in the road. The easy path or the one less travelled. The former, safe, predictable, challenge-free, and usually reasonably lucrative. The latter, almost always bumpy, lonely, financially unrewarding, and often risky. It does, however, offer rewards likely to benefit you for a lifetime. More importantly, your travel down this path offers extraordinary opportunities to provide benefits to others. An opportunity that, imagine, Monash graduates of this type here today all decided to put aside a year, 5 years, 3 months of their life to work in a less fortunate community. What a wonderful thing that would be for both parties. As Gandhi said, the best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. Two other qualities that I have become aware of, usually the hard way, were those of honesty and humility to yourself, to your colleagues, your profession, and the wider community. My wife is here today, and I don't miss an opportunity to call her out for a little dishonesty that she delivered early in my professional career. It was late at night. I'd been doing a lot of on-call, but I was not on call this night, and at 3 a.m. the phone rang. I knew that I could not physically get out of bed and be safe. The phone had been ringing for some time before I managed to shake her awake and say, "Could you answer it and tell them I'm not here?" In that time of my life, I was on call for the police, going to scenes and other events. So my wife answered the phone, and the caller asked if I was there, and she said, "No, he's not." And the caller then said, "Do you know where he is?" This is at 3 a.m. She said, "I have no idea." The caller then asked her, did he have a pager? This was the days pre-mobile. And she said, "Look, I don't know, but I'll ask him." Very awkward. I picked up the phone, and as the caller said, she wouldn't go very well in court, would she? I think on this journey, it's important to recognise that every one of us have biases and prejudices, whether they be religious, gender, sexual. Never let them impact on the service you deliver to others. Secondly, understand your limitations and acknowledge that there may be better people or other people who can perform a certain task or activity than you. Concede your mistakes, there will be plenty, but learn from them. Compromise is often required in practice, whether it be in the health sciences or other professions. Nonetheless, it is often an awkward bedfellow. Again, in my earlier days, when I was working closely with police, I had a significant difference of opinion on a certain matter. The matter involved performing procedures without consent. I took issue with this and declined, and when asked to explain my refusal by a senior police officer, he responded by saying, "If you're going to let your ethics stand in the way you work, then you're wasting your time in this job." I resigned a few days later. A second time where it had a tragic circumstance of a young girl who presented to a hospital I was working at in the Middle East. A young girl presented with abdominal pain, and the doctor had decided that she should be admitted. She was, I think, 13 or 14 years of age and accompanied by her parents. Her parents were very concerned about her, and they asked the doctor what they thought the diagnosis was. And the doctor said, "Well, look, it might be appendicitis, it might be a urinary tract infection, an ovarian cyst, and obviously we need to make sure she is not pregnant." With that, the father unholstered a firearm and shot his daughter dead in the bed. We had a meeting of the doctors after that, and I questioned the doctor as to why he would raise that as one of the differential diagnoses in this challenging situation. And he said, "But you've taught us to tell the truth. You've taught us to be honest with patients." What then followed was a fairly lengthy and often very challenging discussion around opportunities to be honest, but also to understand that compromises may be necessary. When I returned to this place some months later, we had a review again, and this group said, "We've learnt what you said. We now no longer tell the truth." Difficult. Remember in your careers that the majority of people you come into contact with professionally lead a far less fortunate life than yours, and generally through no fault of their own: poverty, chronic disease, disability, and violence. Ask yourself, if I was dealt the same hand in life as them, how would I be performing? You are blessed with a tangible opportunity to assist their lives for the better. Grasp it. Learn and never stop learning. Listen and never stop listening. Communication will be the cornerstone of your professional life, effective and frequent. Any success you achieve will be based on your on your capacity to interact and communication with your patients, your clients, your peers and society, not on your technical skills. Remember also the importance of the team in the delivery of any one of your services. We all are a very small cog in the delivery of a health service. Finally, perhaps on a happier note, enjoyment in a career. Take your work seriously, yourself far less so. Maintain your life balance. Your work is not your life. Maintain your interests and hobbies. They will serve you well during and after your professional life has finished. Acknowledge the pressures of work. Horrible hours, difficult situations, difficult cases, financial pressures. Understand them, address them, but don't let them bury you. Never treat yourself or your family. Find a health professional you trust and place yourself in their hands. And finally, acknowledge the importance of your social network, your family, and your life partner. Despite my own shortcomings, and there have been many, I have been blessed with all three. Collectively, they are the most vital ingredients to a happy and successful career. Once again, my congratulations and my sincere best wishes for the future. Thank you.